This month of June, we are looking at a higher and deeper love, an expanded understanding of what love really is. And the title of the talk today is I Was Made for Loving You, and you were made for loving me. We were made for loving. We are love. And so the focus of this talk today is going to be exploring a very simple phrase, one that can be life-changing, that gives us a power to practice the truth of ourselves. Love is a verb. Love is not only something that we feel, it is something that we choose. It is something that we intend, and it is something that we do. And love being our true nature, the spiritual question we ask ourselves is not just, do I feel loving? Do I feel like I'm loved? But another way to ask that is, how am I actively showing up as love in the world? In the times that we're living in today, this is a really important question because love is often reduced to a preference. What's the easiest way? Or a chemistry. How am I feeling about this person? What's the chemistry between me and this person or the situation that I'm in? Or is it convenient for me to love right now? What's in it for me? Or just it's an agreement. But what it is something much deeper than that. And something to keep in mind that it's really easy to love when whatever's going on pleases us, the person or the situation that we're in, or it reflects to us what we want to see, or it confirms our identity. It's really easy to practice love then. But this higher love, this higher, deeper love that we're talking about, this spiritual love that I am talking about, some people may call it agape love. It's that unconditional love that we are. It asks more from us than that. To be that authentic self that we are. It asks us to be present, to be a presence of love in all situations. To be a participant, not an observer, bystander. And it asks us, most importantly, to become conscious stewards of the energy that we bring into every moment of the day. Conscious stewards of the energy that we bring into every room we walk into, every relationship we're in, every decision that we make. And yes, every moment of the day. Conscious stewards of the energy that we bring. I don't know if you've ever walked into a room and you can feel the energy of the room. The term that I've used and I've heard other people use that the chaos in the room was so thick I could cut it with a knife. Well, that's what we're talking about. Because when I walk into that room, I can either choose to become part of that, or I can choose to be that energy of love that walks into that room. Love is a verb. It's not proven by the intensity of the feeling that we're having. It is proven by the quality of the presence that we are in the moment. In his book, The Road Less Traveled, M. Scott Peck says, love is the will to extend one's self for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. Love is as love does. Love is an act of will, namely, both in intention and in action. Will also implies choice. We do not have to love. We choose to love. We choose to love. And this spiritual life that we are wanting, that we are living, if you're here today, we're all here because we want this greater expression of the love that we are, the divinity that we are, to more freely and fully express itself. So this spiritual life that we are walking is a commitment. It's a commitment to a way of thinking and behaving. It's a commitment to honoring interbeing. I believe it was Thich Nhat Hanh that that brought that concept into us. We are interbeing, and it is honoring the interconnectedness of all. Love's not just a sentiment. It's not merely that's a sentiment. It is a practice. It is a spiritual practice. It is a practice where we come into alignment with the truth of what we are. What we are. Love, peace, harmony. That's what we are. It's coming into alignment that we belong to one another, that we are not separate. There is no separation. That's what Moni read about today. There is no separation, that we are all one. We're each unique and individualized, but we are of one. It's an alignment with spirit that it lives in all people and all things. And when we look at love from this perspective, then we can recognize that every encounter that we have, no matter what's going on, no matter how wonderful it feels or how chaotic or uncomfortable it may feel, it's an opportunity for us to remember who and what we are. Love is a verb. Verb means action. So love must move. It must take form. And the love that we are becomes visible in how we present, how we are present. It becomes visible in our tone of voice, how we listen, our generosity, the courage that we have to be that presence of love, no matter what the situation is in the moment. It is our willingness. It becomes an action in our willingness to stay open, especially when life feels messy and uncomfortable. This is not something we wait to feel before we act as it. It's not to be postponed until all the conditions are right. Because love is the very power that we have. It is the power and the force that helps to transform the conditions that are uncomfortable and messy. It is the choice to align ourselves with what is most true, with what is most whole, with what is most life-giving when circumstances are messy or difficult, when they're not easy. And I'm going to tell you a little story. It's not my story, but it is a story of a friend of mine who has given me permission to tell her story. And this is a person who was a clerk, a court clerk in a criminal courtroom in a relatively large East Coast city. And so you can imagine the chaos, the discord, the anger, the resentment, and everything that could be in that courtroom and on any given day. And this was one courtroom of many in this courthouse. And as she came into this teaching, she's like, I'm going to try this. And so every morning, she started setting an intention. She started doing what we call spiritual mind treatment, that affirmative prayer that is the power tool in our spiritual toolbox. And she would set this intention that this courtroom was going to be peace and harmony. And it wasn't that she would just say those words. She would sit in that courtroom and feel that. And what happened is, over time, and it didn't take a long time, other clerks noticed that there was a lot less chaos in that courtroom, the other criminal courtrooms. And the clerks came to her and said, "What's going on? How is this happening?" Because they couldn't believe that it was much less chaotic in that courtroom. And so she became courageous and told them what she was doing. And what happened was it got to the point where all of the clerks would meet in the morning and set that intention that peace and harmony is what would be present in those courtrooms. And everything started to settle down. And what she did was she set an intention every morning. She set an intention, an inner yes, that inner yes, that quiet decision of the soul. An example of what we can be doing is in setting that intention is saying, today I will meet life from love. I will refuse to let fear, habit, defensiveness, or my old wounds be the loudest voice in my head. I will meet life from love. And intention really matters. And we've all heard the adage, if you will, of our energy flows where our attention goes. Well, when we set an intention, we start to focus our attention on what it is we truly desire. Because what happens is that actions are going to follow the quality of our inner being. And so when we set this intention, then we start to pay attention in a different way. We begin the day by intending to bless rather than judge, or to understand rather than to react, or to include others rather than exclude. And when we set a loving intention, it can reshape our entire day. It reshapes the way we interpret others' behaviors. And it reshapes how we respond to what's going on around us. So something to ask ourselves at any point of the day is, am I entering this moment to bless, to understand, to be inclusive? Or we can also ask is, what is needed here for healing to happen, for truth and understanding to happen? So setting an intention is not a weakness. It's actually, it's a spiritual strength. And I will tell you from my own experience, it takes some great strength to stay anchored in love, no matter what's going on. Because our ego wants to be right. It wants to defend us. It wants to be applauded. So some of the ways that love becomes an action once we set our intention, because once we've set that intention, it is up to us now to choose to take the action. Some things that we can do that are easy to do, that are not heroic and grandiose and highly dramatic, is just to pause before we speak. To take that moment, to take a conscious moment and become that conscious steward of the energy we're bringing into the room. And in that moment, we can choose words that heal rather than ones that wound. It becomes an action. Love becomes an action when we listen fully to others rather than putting together our response and waiting for our turn to talk. Love becomes an action when we forgive ourselves or others. It becomes an action when we set healthy boundaries for ourselves or others. And I include others in that because, I take care of a 6-year-old going on 20 and a 5-year-old who's positive she's 20 now, that she's had her birthday. So we're constantly having to set some boundaries there. And that's love in action. It becomes It becomes an action. Love becomes an action when we offer help to others or when we realize we need help and we ask for it. We're practicing self-love then. It becomes an action when we tell the truth and we tell it with kindness and with wanting to understand. It becomes an action when we just check up on somebody and see how they're doing. Or when we pray for ourselves or another person. Or when we make a commitment and we show up consistently. When we show compassion to ourselves, that too is love in action. When we show compassion instead of berating ourselves. Love is a verb. It's made visible. It becomes an action in our behavior, in how we present ourselves, how we are present in the moment, the presence that we are. When we think of love as a verb, it's not some abstract concept. What it is, it's embodied in us. It is who we are. It becomes practical. It becomes immediate. And again, that action, the action of love does not have to be some heroic or big dramatic thing, because sometimes love is quiet. It can be that person who remembers our name, or when we remember someone else's. I don't know if you've ever been in a place where, you're in a large group of people and there's a guest of honor and they're going around and talking to people and they come back to you and they remember your name. Or if you've ever been on a wait staff in a restaurant and people remember your name when they talk to you. That's an act of love. It's when we notice that someone is being left out and we bring them into the conversation, bring them into the activity that's going on, or when someone else notices that we may be stepping back and brings us in. That's an act of love. Or the willingness to apologize and not defend ourselves. Just apologize. Or as whatever comes through the grapevine, when we choose to not pass on any bitterness, as an act of love. That's love as a verb. It's the courage to celebrate someone else's joy without comparison. And the ability to just sit with another person, allow them to be in whatever pain that they are experiencing, and just listen. And listen without needing to fix, without needing to manage them or the situation or to minimize what's happened. And every one of these is a sacred act. And what's something that's important when we think of love as a verb, as a spiritual practice, as a choice, is we need to remember that self-love is a spiritual responsibility. It's not selfishness, because we cannot pour from an empty vessel. We can only give what we have. I can't take a 2-cup measurer that has 1 cup of water in it and pour out 2 cups. I can't do that. I've got to have 2 cups of water in that 2-cup measuring cup. And so this self-love is being willing to tell ourselves the truth about what is going on in our lives and do it with kindness. It's not abandoning ourselves to gain the approval of others or tending to our inner life, doing the work that we need to do and stop expecting everyone else around us to change because we don't like the way they are. It's doing our soul work. And so when we rest or pray, reflect, forgive ourselves or others, And most importantly, when we give ourselves the permission to begin again, if the day's just not going the way we would like it to be going, we can stop and begin again. We need to recognize that what we're doing is we're not stepping away from spiritual practice. We're actually doing spiritual practice. We are making ourselves more available to be the instrument of love that we are. And it's also important for us to remember that love is always not always neat and tidy. Because one of the ways it can come up is having that hard conversation with somebody and staying in that conversation long enough and being that presence of love, being that conscious steward of the energy that we are bringing into it to, to stay in there long enough for honesty to emerge. And it's saying no when we feel like what's going on is diminishing us, diminishing our soul, or releasing resentments that we've rehearsed for years. I can remember when I had a resentment towards my father, and when I sat down and did radical forgiveness, and I realized that there was a whole different way to interpret the incident that happened, it felt like a ton was lifted off my shoulders. And I could finally have that relationship with my dad that I'd always wanted and craved. And and if love is always easy, if it's always the hearts popping out of, and flowers and everything and all easy, then that love is not strong enough to transform us. Because love is a sacred action and it's courageous participation in the truth. And so when we do this, when we go back to love as a verb and it is an action, it is a spiritual practice, what we realize is that even our discomforts become part of our awakening because it's an indication of something that we need to release, that we need to work on, that inner work that we can do to allow this greater expression of love that we are to be present. And love is a verb in relationships also. We can not only ask ourselves, do I care? But we can ask ourselves, how am I caring? How am I showing up in this relationship? Because when we think about it, this embodied love can change the situation in homes, in workplaces, in communities. And my friend's example in the criminal court is a good example of that. Just being that loving presence. Ernest Holmes, our founder, Ernest Holmes talks about, and he says, love must go forth to meet love. And he goes on to tell us that when we let the love that is within us go out to the divine presence that is in all things, all people, when we let it go out to the God that is right there in front of us, that unique individualized expression of God, then what we are doing is we are loving God with our heart, our soul, and our mind completely. We are loving God. Love reaches, and then love recognizes itself. So when we reach with love, love recognizes itself. So what can we do this week? Well, an easy question to ask ourselves is, what would love do in this situation? Another thing that we can do is choose one loving action and practice it for a day. Something like bless a cashier anytime you buy something for the day. Just bless them. They can have a pretty tough job. Or if there's a coworker that we are just not comfortable with, try to see that coworker with the eyes of love. We can be more patient with a family member who we may be having some issues with. Or a really good one, I know this is one I tend to practice, is reread my text or my email before I send it. Am I reacting or am I responding? Am I using words of healing or am I using words to wound? And we can every morning we can set our intention. And it can be, again, something as simple as let me be a blessing today. Or today I will meet life from love. Love is a verb. And when love is a verb, when we recognize that, when we live it, when we realize it, what happens is every day becomes an opportunity for us to be that loving presence, to be that conscious steward of the energy that we bring into every situation. I can do it by forgiving. I can be that love by serving, by listening, by just seeing the divine in myself and others. I can be that love by choosing to start over if my day is falling to pieces. Because something to remember is that love is not only what we hope for or talk about. It is what we practice. It's a choice. It's a spiritual practice. It is a journey. And that ends the lesson for today. And what I would like to do now is to go into a prayer. Moni did a beautiful prayer, and I'm going to just enhance it a little bit. So I invite you to get yourself comfortable as I'm going to use the I in this prayer and know that there is only one. There's only one on this call right now, in this gathering that we are. It's one expressing itself in all of its beautiful ways. So I rest in that. I rest in knowing that God is all there is. I am enjoy recognizing that it is this love. It is the power in the presence that expresses as love. That is the creator, sustainer, and animator of all that is. And I am brought into great joy to know that I am a unique, individualized expression of that. And so is everyone who is hearing my voice right now. And so what I declare right now is that it is divine love that expresses through me so fully that my life becomes the action of love. That my thoughts are shaped by love. My words are guided by love. My silences are held in love. And my actions bear witness to love. So that wherever I go, something in this world feels more seen, more welcomed, more whole because I remembered to live from love. I remember who and what I am. And I am grateful to know this truth. It brings me into such deep joy and gratitude to know it, to know that this is already is. It is already in the mind of God. And I just let this go into the loving hands of the law that can only say yes, and just allow it to unfold in its fullness, in its lovingness. So I let go and I let it be. And so it is.